and then the process that Martha and I kind of went through working on this one, and then the things that I sort of are my big takeaways for people, for creative people from this book. So how many people know my blog? Okay, that's good. Okay, so first things first. There's those books. So I started my blog in 2009. I think Tuesday or Wednesday is my 8-year anniversary.
Cool.
February 22nd, 8 years. And I started my blog basically because I was jealous of all the art that I was finding online. I'm an artist too, and have a BFA. And at the very end of my BFA, I had a really bad experience with a painting prof. I was a painting major, who told me 5 weeks before I graduated that, quote, "You should never paint again." So that might have been the day my inner critic was born. You know, who knows? So I just hid out and designed for a long time. I was a graphic designer for years and years and just didn't really make my own art. And then ended up starting this blog. I took 5 years off to be home with my son and was missing being creative. And so decided to be an artist, and I started Googling around looking for work that I might like, and I found thousands and thousands of artists, including this one, before I even started the blog, and just felt like, oh, like, what is the point? You know, everything's been done and better than I could ever do it. And I had a major girl crush on Martha. Aww. And actually copied her a little bit.
Yes, you did a little.
Yeah.
Well, it was so much better than mine.
No. So I was terrified of canvas and blank paper because I was told I should never paint again. And so I would just buy canvases, and they were perfect, and then I would stash them away and do nothing to them. And then I think it was actually before I actually wrote the first post that I found Martha, and she was doing sketchbooks on, were they all?
It was like old, like kids' books.
Yeah.
That you get for like a nickel at the thrift store.
And they were so cool. They were just completely covered in paint and words and imagery, and but there was no preciousness to them because it was an old book. And so I thought, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this in a sketchbook. So I kind of missed the whole point, and I went to the art store and I bought a red linen-bound sketchbook with really heavy paper, and it's still in my studio, empty. And so then I went to the thrift shop, and I bought cookbooks from 1964, the Women's Encyclopedia of Cookery. And those are really good because, have you know, the paper doesn't ripple when you paint it.
I haven't seen those.
Oh.
I used a different book.
Old cookbooks work like a charm because they're supposed to get soup splashed on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they work great. And then I wouldn't be so precious because, you know, it cost 25 cents. I'd slap the paint on. If it didn't work out, I'd just rip the page out and keep on going. And before you knew it, it was actually the way that I was working. So the fact that I'm sitting here with Martha Rich all these years later as my friend and a creative collaborator, yes, blows my mind. I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
So the first time I actually reached out to Martha, I was so excited. My blog was like a year old, and I was going to apply to be a curator. There was this open call in Brooklyn, and I had this idea for a show, and I was like, I'm going to email Martha Rich. And so I did, and I said, hello, this is Danielle from the Jealous Curator. Would you like to be in this show? And she wrote back and said, no.
I feel so bad.
So anyway, she said no, and she was just about to start her MFA. So
that's why. That's the only reason I never say no.
Yeah, so that's cool. I'll let it go. So she said no, and I was slightly mortified, but she was so nice in her no that I was okay with it. So years passed, and I kept going with my blog, and she was doing her MFA among 5,000 other things, and I was approached by Chronicle Books to do a book, and so I pitched Creative Block, which came out in 2014-ish, and it's interviews with 50 artists from around the world about how they deal with blocks and inner critics, because they're professionals, but they're also people. So they have to get blocked too, but I wanted to know how they got through it. So even though she had, said no before, I thought, I'm going to email her again. And this time she said yes. So she is in Creative Block.
Yes.
At the same time I was doing Creative Block, Chronicle knows that I love collage. That's the work I do. And so they said, you want to do a book about collage? So I was doing that at the same time that I was doing creative block, which was crazy. Anyway, all good. And creative block did so well that they came back and said, you have to do a follow-up. And I was like, okay, thought I'd pitch creative block too. And they said, no, it's time for you to write a book. 10 chapters, your voice, no Q&As, you writing. And I was actually pretty pumped. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm not trained as a writer. How hard can it be? It's just like a really long blog post. It'll be fine.
Super easy.
Yeah. And so until I sat down to write it. So I had a bit of a panic attack, and it was very, very meta. Here I'm supposed to be writing this book about inner critics, and my inner critic was basically screaming that there was no way I could ever write an entire book, which I will get to in a moment. And it was, in a way, a bit of a relief, because it turns out she was freaking out a tiny bit too. So
a tiny? It was a big bit.
Well, we were both so excited. I'd pitched Martha, I think with Chronicle, I think you're supposed to send 3 illustrators in to, as part of your pitch about who would illustrate this book. And I literally could not think of anyone except Martha. I just couldn't picture anyone else's images working with my words, and so and she's not even in their roster, so I was like, it was a long shot, and they wrote me back that day and said, absolutely yes, do you think you can get her? I was like, I don't know, let's see if she's doing her MFA or not. She might say no. And so, I'm working with this pro, but I'm freaking out, and I'm thinking, oh no, Martha's like going to be totally fine. Turns out she was freaking out too. This is one of the first sketches she sent me, and that was the critic, and who do you think you are, Toots? And then I love this. Asshole, critic, douchey, page of assholes, yes, fun, no, yes, help. And
they wouldn't let us do a page of assholes, though.
No. Well, that was the other thing. That this was actually supposed to be called Your Inner Critic is an Asshole, but Barnes & Noble wouldn't buy it. So, nor would most places, actually. And so we switched it to Big Jerk. But that happened right at the very end before it went to print. So we were doing the cover, and I said, wouldn't it be hilarious to have an ass on the cover as a little nod? So in case any of you are wondering why there's a donkey on our book, that is why.
Ass.
Yeah. Funny.
We laughed a lot about it.
So as far as my freak out goes, and actually I should say about our mutual freak out, it was really good because I think we talked about it. And we Skyped every second Thursday because Martha lives in Philadelphia and I'm in Western Canada. So we would Skype and do these brainstorms. And I think if we hadn't had each other to go, I'm kind of freaking, it would have been way worse. But
yeah,
it was good. We kind of laughed. And
I feel like you don't usually Skype with the person, like you're illustrating a book, you don't. So it was nice because I felt insane when I was doing it. Well, but when I would Skype, it was much better.
Yeah.
I calmed down.
Well, and I kind of screwed her up, too, because there's a chapter in here about dealing with a white page and how it's so terrifying, right? Well, I was like, she's a pro. So I was saying, wouldn't it be cool? Because she did beautiful illustrations for the intro of each chapter. And I said, wouldn't it be great if when the book comes out, we do an art show with all of the original pieces? And she was like, yeah. And so instead of working the way you normally work,
I usually work and just kind of do little things all over the place, and then it always looks like a hot mess. But then I put it together and it looks all beautiful on the computer. So I had to do it on like white pieces of paper that were perfect, and it was that nice Reeve something. Reeves
Yeah.
Dreams or something. It's like that fancy paper at the art store. And I felt scared.
I know, so I did it to her by accident.
I know.
So anyway, but you powered
Thanks.
through. Yeah. And I wrote a book. So, but the way my freak out kind of went down was I thought, how hard can it be? And so I live in a tiny little town, and a friend of mine owns this really beautiful restaurant by the lake, and they have a little booth in the corner that they said they tucked me away, and I thought, great. So I bought a fuzzy sweater. That was my author sweater. Got my glasses on. I bought a hot pink moleskin notebook, still empty, and went down to the restaurant, and I was like, well, look out, everybody, here comes an author. Cracked open my laptop and opened Microsoft Word, and there was just a big white rectangle and a cursor that was like, fuck you. You can't write a book. And I cried in public. I had a full-on panic attack. My heart was beating up here, and I just thought, what have I done? And I spent that first little bit brainstorming how to get out of this deal. And so, I mean, I had these hours that I'd booked, so I thought, well, I'm not going to go home. I'm just going to write this. So I'm going to read you guys my introduction, because this is kind of how it went down. It has been edited, but this is sort of where it went. So, introduction. This is an incredibly white, empty page, and you're the one who's supposed to fill it? You can't write a whole book. Hello? You're not even a writer? Seriously, such a jerk. When I was given the green light to write this book, I was beyond thrilled. I had so many ideas that I could not wait to share. I thought I'd jump right into this exciting new adventure with no fear, but I have to admit that I procrastinated in as many ways as I possibly could. Kickoff meeting with one of my most favorite artists in the world, Martha Rich. Check. Rereading my initial pitch 50 times. Check. Purchase of hot pink notebook to capture all of my brilliant ideas. Check. Yet days rolled into weeks, deadlines loomed, and the thrilling, terrifying task remained undone. I thought I'd have no self-doubt while writing this book. I was excited, and I was ready. Things changed when I came face to face with the blank white rectangle and blinking cursor of Microsoft Word. There was a small, fairly large panic attack and a very long lecture from my inner critic. I've had issues with my inner critic for decades. I'm pretty sure it stems from a terrible critique that I had in the last year of my art school. More on that later. Thankfully, that experience is probably what led to launching my art blog, The Jealous Curator, in 2009. I love my site, and it has changed my life in many ways. I went from feeling completely alone in my creative jealousy to being surrounded by thousands of supported, like-minded readers. By sharing the work of contemporary artists that initially had made me jealous, I slowly began to realize that there's absolutely no need to be jealous. There's a place for anyone who wants to be creative. Somewhere along the way, that toxic, soul-crushing jealousy turned into inspirational, get-your-ass-back-in-the-studio motivation. What a relief. I was slowly starting to figure it all out, but what brought things into focus for me was creative block, the first book I wrote. And then in large block copy, well, you didn't really write it. You interviewed a bunch of artists from around the world. They wrote it. You just asked the questions. How hard can that be? Sorry, that was my inner critic again. Anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, in creative block I asked full-time successful artists about blocks, self-doubt, and the dreaded inner critic. I had no idea how they would answer my questions. I assumed that most of them would respond with, inner critic? Yeah, no, I don't have that. That's for amateurs. But their collective answers stunned me. People who I had assumed had this whole creative thing figured out actually felt just like me, and like you, and every other creative person in the world. We all get blocked, we are all plagued by an inner critic, and no one is immune to the creativity-halting effects of negative criticism. It's true. And as I traveled around promoting creative block, hearing the stories of hundreds of people, I found myself knee-deep in a pile of truths about what it means to be a creative person. 10 truths, in fact. One for each chapter of this book. These truths run the gamut from dealing with soul-crushing negative criticism to quieting bitter inner critics. We'll face the fact that a blank page can be absolutely terrifying and learn how to navigate around it. We'll talk about turning green-eyed jealousy into a green light for your creativity, about failing until we're geniuses, and about the importance of finding a group of trusted people with whom to share our work and our journey. I wrote this book because I want every creative person to know that we are all part of a huge, amazing, talented group of people. We know that being a creative person can feel quite isolating, but none of us is actually alone. Everyone has experienced some, if not all of these truths along the way, even the professionals. But people rarely talk about it, hence feeling alone. Read this book from start to finish or jump around from chapter to chapter. Find the stories that strike a chord with you and your creative pursuits. I made sure to leave a little extra room in the margins for jotting down thoughts or realizations that may pop into your head as you read. I'm a big fan of taking notes, says the girl with the hot pink notebook. I hope these 10 truths bring you the clarifying, freeing aha moments that I've experienced thanks to the openness and honesty of so many of you. See you on the other side. And I sent that to my editor, and I said, so here's where I am. And she was like, great, keep going. So I did. And I realized there's nothing on those slides. Okay, fine, great. That worked out. So this was the pile of truths that Martha did for the intro of the book. Yep, there they all are. Quite a pile. And basically those truths ended up being the 10 chapters of this book, and they were really the things that I sit up here and yap a lot, but then it's talking to you guys after where all of these insights came, because I just realized that everyone I talked to, it was the same issues and the same successes and the same heartaches. And basically I put it into 10 buckets. So it came down to everyone is creative, because everybody is in their own way. Doesn't mean painting or writing or music. It could mean anything. It could mean gardening, cake decorating, anything. Excuses are the enemy. Oh yes, the excuses were crazy. And I reached out to my online crowd to ask for their excuses, and I got 600 in under 2 hours, I think. And Martha did an amazing painting based on it. It's so funny. Labels are for canned peaches, not people. So those labels of, oh, but I work in a cubicle, or oh, I'm just a mom, or just. You got to rip those labels off. Blank paper can be blinding. A green eye is a green light is all about jealousy and making it work for you. Your inner critic is a big jerk. No one can wrestle the pencil out of your hand. I love this. This is about negative criticism from the outside. That is actually a quote from Amanda Happe, who's the artist that painted the cover of Creative Block. And this was one of her answers in Creative Block. I'd asked how she dealt with negative criticism. And she said, the great thing is you don't have to care. No one can wrestle the pencil out of your hand. You get to keep going in absolute defiance. And I cried when I read that, because I realized that in that moment that it was me that put my pencil down and didn't make art for all those years. It wasn't that prof that put my pencil down. He was kind of a jerk, but I'm the one that should have picked my paintbrush up the next day and the next day and the next day, and I didn't. So that's a really important one to me. Failure leads to genius, because there is no such thing as failure unless you quit. So this is all about just experimenting and playing until you become a genius. Creating in a vacuum sucks is about sharing your work, and blocks are meant to be broken, because blocks are just part of the process. They happen to everybody, and you just have to push through them. So the common denominator in all of this was your inner critic, which is how the title of the book came about, because I realized it was all of those things. Those blank pages is your inner critic going, don't wreck it. The jealousy is your inner critic saying, that person's so much better than you. And I just started to realize it was this little voice that was the cause of all this trouble. So if we could quiet this voice, we might be in better shape. So the 5 sort of main things I want to pass on today are ways that you can turn that around for yourself, whether you're a creative person or not. I mean, this is a human thing. This has nothing to do with art. This is just people. So copy the experts. So you kind of think that the people you admire, the professionals, whether it's artists, authors, musicians, that they have it made, and they would never ever second guess themselves, but they do. They all have an inner critic.
That is true.
Yeah, they all get blocked. But the 3 things that they have that you can totally copy are this: dedication. They keep making, whether their work ends up in a novel or on a stage or on a gallery wall or in the garbage can. They show up every single day and make. Time. They make space and time to be creative. They don't put their work at the bottom of their priority list. Being creative and doing their work is their priority. So, there's that whole, oh, well, first I have to go to work, and then I've got to go grocery shopping, and then I've got to go to the gym, and this and this and this, and if there's time, maybe I'll paint. Then you don't. Then you go to bed. So it's about moving that up in the priority list and sticking to it, even if it's 30 minutes a day or whatever it is. Trust. A lot of successful professionals actually learn to trust that voice. A few of them in Creative Block said, oh yeah, we're friends. We don't get along very well, but I kind of trust them. So when that voice does pipe up, they kind of know that maybe they're headed down the wrong track, and they will adjust what they're doing. And so if you can get to that point, you're golden. Do you ever hear yours?
My inner critic?
Yeah.
Not much as I used to.
Not until I
Thanks
make you
to
work
you.
on perfect paper.
Yeah. Thanks to you, I don't have an inner critic anymore.
Oh, wow.
I'm lying.
Yeah. I love this. Give it a new name. So I actually really don't like the term inner critic, which is weird since it's on the front of this book, but it's just so, how can you make friends with something that's 50% critic? And so I was teaching at a high school workshop, and I asked these kids, they were aged 14 to 17, do you guys know what an inner critic is? And sadly, they all knew very well. Teenagers know very well what an inner critic is. And I said, well, what do you call it? I'm looking for a new term. And so they had swear words and all sorts of things. But this one kid put up his hand and said, I call mine Arlo. And I was like, that is awesome. I want an inner critic named Arlo. Because, I'm sure Arlo can be a jerk too. but I have a much better chance of being friends with Arlo than my inner critic. So I always tell like kids, adults, everybody, give it a name, like, Harold or Tim or something that's, not threatening in any way. Who?
It's always a dude.
Well, for me it is. I know. People are like, why? Well, it's just because of this source of mine, I think. But yeah, it could be Lydia.
Randy.
Janine. Yeah, Randy. Whatever you like. Whatever does, because then you've personified it. And it's not just this evil, floaty voice. It's Randy. And you can be like, shut up. I'm busy, So personify it. And
Chad. That's it. Chad. Sorry.
She's brainstorming. Stop being creative for like 10 minutes, okay? So anyway, highly recommend that. Next one, say thank you. So this sounds incredibly simple, but it is very weirdly difficult to do. So first thing, never, ever, ever speak badly of yourself or your work. So when someone compliments you, say thank you, instead of giving them an itemized list of flaws. So if
everybody does
that about everything, like your house, your clothes, whatever. So if somebody says, "Oh, I love that drawing," and you say, "Oh, thanks, but like I don't really love that top part, and I didn't have the pencil that I wanted to use," and blah 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 blah, your inner critic is in heaven and rolling around in negativity. So if you can just say thank you and control yourself and not say the rest, your inner critic, every time you do that, loses a little bit of power and you forget to give the list of negative bits. And it also makes you a lot more fun to talk to at a party. So you're welcome. Don't be precious. This is from the chapter on blank pages can be blinding. It's a big white sheet with just this little poodle in the corner. I needed an excuse for Martha to do one of her poodles, so that's how we did that.
Thank you. That was fun.
But the idea is to just make and make and make and not be precious. It's those white canvases, and for writers, that perfect white page that will stop you. So there's a lot of tips in the book and around, and this is what I did, was I stopped with the perfect papers. I actually just got a bunch of computer paper, ripped it into squares. I didn't even cut it, because then I would get precious about how perfect, exacto. No, rip it. Have a little stack of 100 or whatever there, and just make stuff. And throw it on the floor, and go again, and flip it over, and go again. And you're going to get to a point where that doesn't become precious. Like, that's how I screwed her over. But, like, that's how she normally would work. Just on a big sheet, she's got, 20 poodles on there, and then she picks the one she likes. And I was like, no, can you do it on a perfect piece of paper? We're going to put it in a show. And so...
We haven't put it in a show yet.
I know, so I totally screwed you over for nothing.
I know.
Sorry. I'm getting you back for saying no to my other show. It was all a ruse.
And you're evil.
I know.
An evil genius.
And then the other thought, too, is, and there's lots in here, but, mess up the thing. So get your perfect canvas that's been sitting in your studio for however long, and just go for it. Put marker on it, write something on it, slap some paint on it. It is now no longer perfect, and you can start from there. And finally, translate and rewrite. So in most cases, the inner critic's bedside manner is not very good. So it might be telling you the truth, but because that message is being delivered by an asshole, it is really, really hard to listen to what it's saying. And if anybody insults you, you put your defenses up, right? So you instantly, it causes panic and anger and whatever. So if you can put your gloves down for just a second and take a deep breath and think about what it's really saying and then translate it, maybe there is a nugget of truth in there. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just a jerk. But maybe there is a nugget of truth. So my inner critic has all sorts of things to say. I shouldn't write books. I shouldn't show my art, because what if people find out that the jealous curator, her curatorial skills are here, but her art-making skills are here? And that's what my inner critic is like, don't show anybody anything. And so... But I wanted to know, if that's how everybody felt or not. Oh, I have a feeling this slide is broken. So I reached out to my Facebook and Instagram crowd and said, okay, what are the mean things that your inner critic has to say? And I got, 600 or something almost instantly. But the hilarious thing was, of those 600 comments, who has the most unoriginal ideas and voice ever? It's your inner critic. Out of those 600, there was 4 things that just came up over and over from people all over the world, men, women, all different. It was 4 things. So the landslide winner, that's supposed to be black, and it says, you're going to fail, don't bother trying. That was what came up over and over and over. And what a good excuse, right? It's why bother? So you just do nothing. And So what I suggest is translating that to something more like this. Oh, I'm going to fail like a genius. And so so the next time you hear that voice pipe up, stop whatever you're doing and write down the mean thing. What I do with kids, I won't make you guys do it, but what I do with kids is I have them quietly, I give them all a little piece of paper and a pencil and have them write down what their inner critic tells them. Then I make them stand up in pairs in front of everybody and yell that thing that they wrote down at the person beside them. Full volume, swears, whatever, and make them scream it at this other person. And when I ask them to do it, you can just see the horror. They almost always cry. They apologize before they say it. They apologize after they say it. They hug, and then they sit down. And I say, okay, so if you're so upset about saying it to this person, why do you say it to yourself over and over and over? And so... But I don't make them leave right then. I flip it around, because that would be really mean to just be like, okay, bye, thanks for coming. So what I do is, and I'll ask you guys to do this, so whatever it is that you do, and you hear that voice come up, whether it is your gardening or whatever it is, write it down. If you can, say it out loud, either in a mirror or to somebody. And
I'm the worst gardener ever.
Yeah. But when you hear it out loud, you realize how ridiculous it is, and you realize how mean it is, and you realize that you would never say it to a stranger or a friend or a child or anybody. So why are you saying it to yourself? You flip it over, and you write the positive opposite. And then, stick that on your fridge or in your studio or whatever, and, just on a scrap of paper. And before you know it, you're surrounded by these positive statements instead of all this negative buzz that's in your head. You're kind of owning it and flipping it around. And I even suggest to people that are artists to, do a hand lettering project with the nice statement, or do a collage with the nice statement. So, at the end of it, you have a nice piece of art too. Win-win. And so finally, welcome to the club. Once you've done all this is the conclusion. So I'll read the conclusion, and then we can do a Q&A, and I'll finally let her talk, because I've just talked this entire time. Sorry, Martha. Okay. Right. Welcome to the club. Well, there you have it. 10 truths about what it means to be a creative person. Experimenting, carving out time for creativity, finding your tribe, making criticism work for you. The repeating themes within these truths overlap and intersect, and when woven together, they make up the intricate tapestry that is a creative life. There will be snags here and there, but this creative journey is made even more beautiful and interesting by a bit of imperfection thrown in for good measure. It is not a simple thing to be a creative person. It's emotional, it's exciting, and rewarding, and challenging. The one thing a creative life does not have to be, however, is lonely. We are not alone. By standing up and owning our I am creative labels, we have automatically been initiated into a giant creative club with members of all ages, all skill levels, from every corner of the world. The 10 truths laid out in the 10 chapters of this book apply to every single member of this club. Even the greats who appear to, quote, have it made, experience days when ideas just don't show up. But that's okay, because they will just pick up their pencils and try again tomorrow. The other benefit of membership, you have a huge creative tribe to call on whenever you need them. Whether you want someone to bounce ideas around with, or you're looking for a shoulder to cry on after some unwanted criticism, or even better, you need someone to pop the champagne with when it's time to celebrate a creative success. I hope that this book, with its advice, stories, and project ideas, will bring you a truckload of life-changing revelations. Remember the joy in creating just to create, embrace the wavering line, and tell your jerk of an inner critic to take it down a notch, or he won't make it through the clubhouse door. The end. Now go make stuff.
Woo!
I wrote a book.
I made the pictures.
Yes, you did. That's the end. So,
That's good.
Would you like to add anything?
Well, I live that book, because I worked in a regular corporate job for a long time, and then somehow I ended up going back to school and doing that. And I every single thing in there I have said to myself, and I don't say it as much anymore. I kind of squashed that guy, Randy.
Well, tell your story. Like you went back at 35.
I did, because
to school. Yeah,
I did, because some people told me, two people told me I could do it. Right, one of them's right here, and I always drew and did things, and I went back to school at night, just trying it out because it's something I wanted to do. I didn't want to work in a cubicle anymore, and I had an inner critic that told me for 30. Well, actually, I should have gone.
Yeah.
When I was in college, the first time I had a drawing teacher tell me I couldn't draw.
In first year?
Yeah, like I was 18. It was devastating. And I stopped. I didn't draw anymore after that.
She has a sociology degree instead.
I do. I have a degree in sociology and anthropology.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes. I'm going to go do a dig after this. And then I'm going to study some people. But no, it was devastating, and I stopped. And I've always drawn ever since I was a little kid. So that was kind of really bad. That's why I never tell anybody when I criticize, I do it in a positive way. Because it can like stab you and make somebody stop.
And that's not criticism, that's feedback.
Yeah, I give feedback.
I like that a lot better.
But I went back to school at 35. I didn't know how I was going to do it, how I was going to pay for it. I just knew it was the right thing. And with just a few words of encouragement from some people, I had the guts to do it. I still can't believe I did it. Like, it still freaks me out. And I've been doing it for 17 years. Dang. Dang. But
let's give a round. That's amazing. Such a good story. Yay, Martha.
I told it kind of weirdly. But I didn't have a book like that. I just had people. I started finding people who kind of, finding your people who kept encouraging me, even though I was, as a student, you're always like, well, this isn't very good, and I did this and I did this, and you tell people instantly that your work stinks, even though it might not. But it's a bad habit that everybody gets in. So this is a really good guide to getting out of that. Because I'm a teacher now too, and every single person I have ever taught says that when they put their work up on the wall, and they're like, well, this is like the worst thing I've ever done, but and I tell that's like I have to train people to stop doing that, and that's one of the things in there.
Yeah.
Don't be so there might be something good. You don't know. You're just making stuff.
Well, and even if it's just a nugget, maybe it's just the top right corner that's fantastic, and then there's your work for tomorrow. Start in that top right corner and go again, and
find the nugget.
Yeah. Well, I cried so many times writing this book because it was all these demons that I kind of hadn't faced ever. I'd done a lot of thinking about it myself, but then to actually type it was like, oh, geez, sharing your work. I guess I should start doing that, And so it was cool. We both, have lived this, and I'm sure lots of you guys have too. It's not, we realized we were just saying none of us are snowflakes.
Nope.
We realized my story is like everybody has the same story.
And now. Has anybody in here been told you can't do something? See? It's the worst.
It is the worst.
But it's not the end. If it happens, it's not the end of the world. I'm 53 now, and I make a living as an artist. It's pretty cool. I used to work in a cubicle behind Waterworld, and I heard that every day. And it was like a little triangle. And I repossessed cars, too, so this is much better. I'm very random.
I'm so glad you found
I know. This is so much more fun. I can travel around. I can do my job anywhere. It's weird. I have less of a critic. The older you get, the critic gets less powerful.
Yeah.
Big time. Randy.
Yeah. Screw you.
I don't listen at all. Yeah. Except for maybe as I'm speaking in front of people, I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst speaker in front of people. Martha, you stink at speaking.
Randy. Put him over there. Is that Randy's voice?
That was Randy.
That was awesome.
All right, I'm crazy. Now I'm embarrassed.
Well, let's turn it to them then. We'll embarrass them.
Ask a question. I feel the blush coming on.
Does anybody have questions?
Ooh, silence.
Yep.
I think I would say 90%, 80 to 90% of people here have grown up around toxic language. To this day, when I break an egg, when I make an omelet, I have to think, am I doing it right? Because someone said, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
To this day, and then I mess it up. I just get another one, and then I do it right. There, see, I did.
And then in 5 minutes, you're eating an omelet. Forget them. No, I know. It's funny. And your inner critic isn't just one thing. It wasn't for me. It wasn't just that one professor. It's little I always tell people that inner critic is not part of you. It's a collection of experiences. It's a collection of things you've heard. It's a collection of things that you believe about yourself that are probably false. And you plant those little seeds. That professor said that. I should never paint it again. Okay, plant. Somebody said something as, a creative director said something as a designer. So I planted that, you don't have good sense of color. Okay, poop, pop that in there. And then once you sit down to do your own work, all of those things grow together into a big blob monster, and that's how your inner critic is formed. So it's like those little toxic things that you hear. And actually, is this being recorded? Oh, never mind.
Were you going to say a swear word?
No, I've already sworn like a zillion times. But that thing about the inner critic saying, well, you didn't really write it. My mom said that to me. After Creative Block came out, I was going to an author event, and she's like, oh, an author event? Well, who's the author? And I was like, me? And she's like, well, you didn't really write it. I mean, those artists wrote it. You just asked them some questions, right? Anywho. But I love my mom, and my mom loves me, and she's very, very proud of me. But she's, and so I was like, boop, plant that seed. And so I even will call that out now when I'm talking about these books. It'll be like, it's just a Q&A, but this is the book that I wrote. Like, I qualify it now, where until my mom said that, it never even occurred to me that I didn't write Creative Block. So it is this, I can crack a mean egg, though. I'll tell you that. But it's a collection of these things. So you have to realize, you have to separate that from yourself and realize that, like, my mom didn't mean it in a mean way, and that prof was probably just having a really bad day, and I let it affect me for 15 years.
I know.
And maybe he doesn't even remember me, I'm sure. And I allowed him to stop me from making for 15 years. Like, what a colossal waste of time.
I love Creative Block.
I
love this book.
Oh, thank you. I'll let my mom know.
And your therapist.
Yeah.
Speaking of just letting that one person affect you, why do you think we let one person drown out other maybe positive feedback we've gotten from other people? Like, for me, I could get one criticism and maybe 10 positive things, but the criticism is all that I remember, all that I hear. Why do you think we filter that?
I think that's a human thing. I think everybody does that. But I think it also depends where that one comes from. Like, if it's somebody that you respect, like, that was my painting prof. He was the chair of the department. He was a working artist. He was a painter. So to me, I had him on a pedestal. And when he said something, it really meant, it was really important, So I usually find that when people are really affected, it's because it was somebody that was really meant something to them. Because you can usually slough off, if some internet troll says something, you can be like, it still upsets me, it still annoys me, and kind of makes me mad, but it certainly won't stop me in my tracks. But if it's somebody that you kind of hold in high regard, and then 99 other people say it's fabulous, it's going to affect you. But again, you have to remember that, so that's their opinion. Not everybody. Can you imagine making a piece of art that everyone in the world loved?
It doesn't
exist. And so, you know what? And the thing is, I hate it when people deliver it in a bad way. Like Martha said, feedback. Give feedback. That prof would just say things that would just make you want to quit, as opposed to going, well, this is not working, but you know what? What is working is your color choices. So maybe go in a different direction, but with these colors. Great, I would have been pumped. I would have been excited. But so it's the delivery of these people, too. So you can't give them that much power. It's hard. It's really hard. But you just have to know that probably everybody else in this room feels exactly the same way. You're not alone, and just keep moving forward.
I know, it's interesting that I did that. I had one teacher tell me no way, and then 30 years later I had some teachers tell me yes way, and I listened to both of them. Luckily, the good one was last.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It is.
It's all timing, too, where you are in your head. Mm-hmm. I saw somebody else's.
I feel like with social media especially, there's a lot of emphasis on, this person was 16 when they wrote their first book. This person was, this age. There's a lot about, young prodigies, and I think, that gets in my way sometimes, too, because I think, well, that person already did it, and they're, 2. But am I going to work on something that won't come out until much later? How do you get past that?
I don't know. I'm a perfect example. I'm a late bloomer. I think it's better to be a late bloomer because you're more, the older you get, the more interesting you are. And then if you've done something at 16 and you're like the best at it, then what do you do after that? Like, I feel bad for the prodigies. I just got around it because I had no choice because I was old.
Well, and we were just talking at Art Center the other day because that's where Martha went when she went back to school, and yeah, you were saying the thing about that, right? That you don't want to peak at Art Center.
Yeah, you don't want to peak in art school.
You want to go on and do other things. So
you just have to not even, because that 16-year-old's probably got some weird insecure, like we're all weird and complex and full of doubt, and we're all putting on this show looking like we're the coolest, best, I got it together. And you just have to remember that. And it doesn't even matter if someone else did it. You'll do it differently.
When I was going to start my art, I didn't want to start my art blog. My husband is a social media nerd, and he said, you should start a blog, because I was so obsessed with bookmarking artists that I loved, and I was just getting more and more and more depressed. And he said, you need to archive this and show who, have a visual journal of who you like. And I was like, what's the point? There's already a zillion art blogs out there. And I said, what's the difference between me and all these other things? And he said, that's it. He said, the difference between you and every other art blog out there is you. So he said, this needs to be written in your voice. It can only be your taste. And he said, and then it will set you apart. And he said, if you're committed to it and you just do it every day, you'll build this voice. And I did it, and I loved it from the minute it started, and I really did turn the jealousy into something else. I'd never had any intention of anyone reading that blog. It was pure self-therapy. And then people started following because they felt the same, but it was because I was just true to who I was. The first post I wrote, because I minored in art history, so the first post, I was excited. I had a blog. Greg programmed it for me, so I wrote the first post, and I was like, society's view of the blah, 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 and I got all art history-ish, and it was really long, and I showed Greg, I'm like, look, my first post, and he was like, no. He's like, God, no. And he said, you're funny. Right? He said, you're funny. He said, you need to write the way that you talk, and then your voice will come out. And so now if I see a piece of art and I think, sweet Jiminy, I actually write, sweet Jiminy, and go from there. And that's the Canadian difference, right? Even if I don't even know what that is. Even if a 16-year-old has done it or whatever, you're going to do it differently because you're you, and you just have to really own that. Kumbaya. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question. So the idea of your inner critic is a big jerk. Do you take that with you in terms of just having day-to-day confidence as well? So let's say you have to make a call and you have to ask somebody to do something for you, right? And you're thinking, they're going to think I'm this, or they're going to think I'm, and then you pump yourself up and say, no, that's my inner critic.
Yeah, now, because I've been living in this, I didn't really realize it for a long time, and I'd often just not call.
So are you fearless now?
No, certainly not. I was really nervous before this. That's why I wear black all the time. So
really?
So you don't see me sweat.
Oh.
Yeah. I get really nervous before everything that I do, but I also know I totally took credit for this. I got to go. The Oprah people called for the first book, and I got to do some segments on Own Show, and I totally stole one of my husband's analogies and didn't give him credit. Uh-oh. So I'll give it to him now. So he said a long time ago, we were trying to make a big decision about something, and this is such a good analogy, and now I just use it, and you guys will totally know what I mean. So he said, these scary things, he said, it's like a high dive. If it's your first time jumping off, you get up there, and the longer you stand there, the further the pool looks away, the wind gets a little bit colder, the scarier it seems. But he said the minute you jump, the jump is usually quite fun. The pool is always warmer than you think that it's going to be. And the next time you climb back up there, you're so much more willing to jump because you know it's going to be okay. And for the longest time, I just didn't jump. For 15 years, I just stood up there shivering. And then every time I jump, I'm still scared. It's still high. It's still windy. But every time I do it, I know that it's going to be fine and I can climb the ladder again. That was a Greg Krysa analogy.
Sharing your work now, on your Instagram, and you made your own Instagram for your work now. I love seeing it.
It's scary, but I'm trying to practice what I preach. So I've been, I kind of came across a new, style or something that I just sort of fell into because I made a whole bunch of little squares and I didn't get precious, and it was just meant to be fun over Christmas, not this past year, but the year before. I was laughing out loud by myself in the studio. I hadn't had that much fun making art since I was about 17. And at first I didn't share any of it. I was just so happy to be, how old was I then? 42, and actually making work. But then I started writing this book, and I'm writing a chapter about creating in a vacuum sucks. And I was like, perhaps I should show this to someone. So I forced myself to actually Instagram it. I used to Instagram like a corner. I'm like, no, here's the whole thing. Here's the title. And it's like getting great feedback from a teacher that you trust, is that my community is so amazing. You've seen the comments. People are so nice that it kind of encourages me to keep going. And there's some mean comments too, but at this age, maybe it's the age, or it's this work, I don't care what people think. I'm having so much fun. But now I'm at the next, so I've been doing it for just over a year. I've sold some stuff, but when people force me to put my stuff in an actual show. But I'm at this weird hurdle now where I don't want to, people are like, why don't you have an online shop set up? And I'm like,
I think I said that once.
Yeah. I don't know. But I'm okay with not knowing because I'm not ready to sell them. They're still my babies. I don't know if they're fully where they're supposed to be. I just don't feel like selling them yet. And instead of I've been feeling badly that I'm not, well, now I'm an artist, so now I'm supposed to be selling them. And I was just like, screw that, I don't want to. Martha?
All right.
So, a day will come when I feel like I'm ready to, and then I will. But it's so fun to making art again. I feel like a kid, and it's just I haven't felt like that in so long. So I just want to roll around in that for a little bit longer, I think, before I start worrying what's selling and what's not.
I think I'm going to write now.
Okay.
And then you can illustrate my book.
Let's do that.
I have a question. Martha, I went back to school too.
Cool.
Left my PR, social media career, and I'm going to Art Center.
Oh, awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
In the film program, one of the few women there.
Nice.
So my question is for the both of you. So, I don't know if you left the former career, but I know that you did.
I definitely did.
Yeah. When did you start considering yourself an artist and creator and not referring to your previous career?
I can't remember now.
That next level.
I think I wrote that in I think.
Let me have a look.
I think it took 5 or 6 years. I think. I can't remember. It's gone now because I definitely know that I'm an artist as a profession.
Did you feel that way when you were going to Art Center?
No.
You say yeah.
Not at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of had a little. I mean, obviously I did, or I wouldn't have gone to school. But I didn't really believe it for a long time. But I think just keep doing it, and then you'll eventually start forgetting what your old job was.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was like to be in a cubicle, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know Trey Spiegel? Trey Spiegel, he's a painter from New York, and he does these really cool paint-by-number paintings, but he worked in a magazine for years. But he was friends with, he knew Andy Warhol and Keith Haring and all these guys, so he's they were artists. His friends were artists. He was a designer who dabbled in art. And then when he left design to be an artist, he had a really hard time saying it. So what he did, and I love this, he said the first time he ever said he was an artist was on one of those forms when you're re-entering the country on the plane and you have to write occupation. So he was like, artist. And he said, I thought for sure I was going to get stopped at customs and the guy was going to be like, you're a liar. And he said, I just kept practicing that, until I felt like I could say artist to somebody at a dinner party without bursting into tears and or laughter. And so it's practicing too, and feeling confident.
Practice.
Someone asked me at a dinner party, a random dinner party a few weeks ago, what I did. And I said, I thought I'm going to try it out. And I was like, I'm a writer. Well, I did write a book, so I just said, and they were like, cool. Anyway, and I was like, oh, well, that wasn't so hard. Nothing happened, but I said it out loud, so it was good.
Cool, that's exciting.
How do you know when you're done revising?
Martha? Oh, gosh. You just know. I hate that. People always ask that question. You just know. I don't know how I know, but I have to set something. I have to work on something, set it aside for at least one day, and when I go back, then I know. But it usually takes. I have to put it away for a little bit to know for sure.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I worked on something today, and I was like, I don't know if this is finished, so I'm going to go back and look at it in the morning. Hopefully it's finished, because I don't really have time to do much more to it.
And sometimes it's just a matter of going too far on too many pieces and being like, dang, should have stopped. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like you're going to mess some up, and you will have gone too far, but you'll learn from that. And then next time, you'll either put it aside but there's going to be lots of things that end up on the floor.
Yep.
And that's fine.
I've made a lot
That's part
of
of
bad stuff
that's
that I
part
went
of
too far on.
Yeah, that's just part of it. The people put so much pressure on themselves that it's like, I've carved out an hour of art time today, and this thing is going to be a freaking masterpiece. And it's like, and then when it's not, you're like, what? Like, it's so shocking. Like, why? You know, and it's just like, of course it's not. You know, so and you have to just cut yourself some slack and allow that.
If you set out to make a masterpiece, it's definitely not going to be one.
Yeah. Well, tell your cat,
Guaranteed.
Tell your cat story. I don't have a cat here, but
Oh, the stop talking?
yeah.
What, just that I did it?
Well, that it was just for fun.
Yeah, well, I made this cat that says stop talking. I did it like in 15 minutes because I was doing 100 paintings for $100, because when I didn't have work, I kind of create work for myself. And people love that dang cat. I love it, but I'm kind of sick of it now.
But now it's on T-shirts and bags and whatever. And it was just things she did in 15 minutes just for quick and fun, right? So,
but I did know when I saw it. I was like, oh, that one's done.
yeah.
Stop talking. Martha, stop talking.
I wish I had that cat here.
I know, but silence.
Any tips for kind of finding a creative support community?
Well, I found mine taking classes at night. I started out taking classes at UCLA Extension because I always knew I wanted, I was going through a hard time. I was going through a divorce, and I had already, this is like I hadn't done art in a long time, and I'm like, frickin' frack, I won't swear. Frickin', I'm going through this crap. I'm going to do something fun for myself. I did all the things I was supposed to do, and it's all falling apart, so I'm going to go take classes in design. I thought I wanted to design magazines. So I took graphic design classes at UCLA, and that's when I started finding people who are doing the same thing. I mean, or coming to things like this. You're going to find them. They kind of come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, and workshops. And I even found, like, for me, I live in this tiny little town in Canada, and my network has shown up online. Like, I have friends all over the world now who are my people, and, I can reach out to on Facebook because I see that, it's Australia and it's 9 a.m. there and it's whatever time, and I can say, hey, can you just look at this thing? And that kind of comes about by just, if you follow a lot of the same Instagram accounts, you'll just sort of see the same people commenting, and you can, like, reach out to them. That's why they're on social media. It's because they're social, and there's lots of Facebook groups you can join. But I mean, you're not in a tiny town. You're in LA, so there's lots of things.
Or put some of your, like, if there's something you make, put it out there, and then see what people say, and they'll usually be nice. And you'll find one person, and you'll be like, cool.
Yeah, BFFs. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Can I ask another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Do you think the economic pressure to use art as a career I've noticed that can stifle creativity?
Oh, for sure.
Do you think that your life path of kind of blooming later in life helped you that way, that you didn't have to depend on it for, like, you had another income?
I've been a creative director. I was a graphic designer for 18 years. I just quit in June. And I've been doing the blog for 8 years as a side hustle, but it was a full-time job too. And I don't know, I might have to go back to design. I'm going to give myself a year to see if I can just do Jealous Curator, but if not, I will be designing logos once again. So I think a lot of people do both. And I have a podcast now, and I talk to lots of people. So many of them that I assume, I've called them to be on my podcast, I assume they're full-time artists. They're like, oh no, like I have a full-time job doing this, or this. And so it's kind of a hustle until you become Martha Rich. Martha Riche.
Martha Riche.
Yeah.
I worked, you know what I did is I worked like jobs I didn't want to do, so I wouldn't get sucked. Like if I'd had a creative job,
right.
I would, because you get sucked into that, and then you lose all your creativity. You're like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to do anything creative later on. So I did like being a secretary kind of thing to make money while I was doing it. I did it for like 5 years, and now I don't have to. I'm doing just art. So I think it does help give you that a little bit, so you don't have as much fear, because it's scary. But now when I think about it, I can't go back to a cubicle. I just can't do it. And I will eat ramen noodles again if I have to, because it goes up and down. But yeah, unless you're independently wealthy, that's fun.
I found like a long time ago, I had a little Etsy shop, and I put up a few pieces, and there was this one with a bear that was screaming a rainbow of embroidery thread that I just done for fun. Well, it sold instantly, and then I got about 30 emails from people saying, I want a bear, I want a bear. So I was like, well, hold on, bears sell like hotcakes. So I started doing all these bears, and it was just like, I didn't want to do any more bears, but I was like, I felt like, okay, well, I'm supposed to sell stuff. I think that's why I'm hesitant to sell now, because I'm like, well, hold on. I don't know if this is what, I don't want that thing where I'm trying to meet the demands of the market. It's like, that's not why I want to be making. So there is that huge pressure. So if you can alleviate it by having a part-time job or whatever, but then you have to do the thing where you make it a priority. Even if you work in a cubicle all day, you have to come home. There was this guy I met that has a sign making company, and he said that he's got a garage beside his house where his studio is. He gets home from work at 5, and he said, before I go into my house and say hi to my kids and have dinner and whatever, I don't go through the main door. I go into my garage, I work for 1 hour, and then I come home. Because he said, I know if I go into the house, then I'm going to, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, I'll do it after dinner. No, you won't. So he just builds it into his day. So nobody expects him home till 6 because he's in that garage. So you have to make it a priority, even if you have a day job.
Are we wrapping?
Should we stop talking? I don't know what time. It's midnight. Pardon?
Jealous Curator?
Oh, my podcast is Art for Your Ear on iTunes.
I don't have a podcast.
You've been on my podcast twice, though.
I have. I'm going to just have Randy's podcast
there you go.
soon.
So should we hop down and we'll move?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.